Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 91 of Sports Speak. Hope you're doing well. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
With his shirt on the right way. He showed up with his shirt on backwards, but we're ready to go. It's been a crazy day. And of course, we're recording this at 4:00 in the afternoon on Friday, which means just 10 minutes ago, it was just announced that Deshaun Watson has decided on his destination. And after it seemed like the Browns were out of it, the Cleveland Browns will be the place it seems Deshaun Watson is heading to. Baker Mayfield requesting a trade yesterday. So likely Baker will be heading to the Houston Texans, where I think it would be absolutely hilarious if he ends up becoming the backup quarterback to Davis Mills after all of this. But Deshaun Watson, it looks like, is going to be heading to Cleveland. Of course, the Browns also brought in Amari Cooper, got rid of Jarvis Landry, a lot of turnover on that offense. We're joined once again by Rahill Jaiswal here. Rahill, I guess I'll go to you first. Your feelings on this sort of surprising move, another elite quarterback heading to the AFC.
Yeah, surprising. We all thought it was down to the Falcons and the Saints, and it's the move from Cleveland because ever since Baker Mayfield's been drafted, the question is, can he be consistent? But Deshaun Watson is an unbelievable talent. I still think they do need one more wide receiver because given Amari Cooper's track record in Dallas, he tends to disappear in bigger games on the road. So I think I would like them to go and sign another wide receiver. Obviously, they released Jarvis Landry, but that's not an option. Do you want to bring in a veteran, maybe Julio Jones or someone like a Juju Smith-Schuster? You could do that. I just feel like they're still lacking a little bit as far as the weapons go, but yeah, I mean that division, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that division with the Bengals, the Ravens. We'll see what's going on with the Steelers now at some point. But as for Cleveland, they get their quarterback. They've been. When was the last time they've had a quarterback? They've been through so many different quarterbacks. They get their guy. But we're going to see people are willing to take the risk on Deshaun Watson. We're going to see if a suspension is coming his way for 4 or 6 games, but I think Cleveland's willing to wait for that.
Yeah, I think so. And I just want to say, I really feel like this is a move for Cleveland, not for next year, but for 2023 and beyond, because you can expect there's going to be some sort of a suspension. Likely Case Keenum's going to be the backup quarterback, will be playing in some of those games. And we know how stacked the AFC is this year. It's not going to stay like that forever. I think there's going to be a couple of quarterbacks who play there who are going to realize the AFC is way too hard. Look at the NFC. Tom Brady is eventually going to leave us. And, eventually there's going to be that opening in the NFC to compete and try to win a Super Bowl, and it might be an easier path in the AFC. So I think there's going to be some quarterbacks, maybe Derek Carr down the line with the Raiders, for example, Ryan Tannehill. I know a lot of guys have linked up long-term in the AFC, but there's going to be some other really solid quarterbacks, playoff contending quarterbacks that I think head to the NFC in the next couple of years. And that's when the opening really comes for Cleveland, especially since now there's going to be a window in the AFC North, because we don't really know about Lamar Jackson's longevity as an NFL quarterback and as being an elite NFL quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, because we didn't see that last year, even when he was healthy outside of that Indianapolis game. We know the Steelers are going into a rebuild with no more Ben Roethlisberger. We have no idea who their quarterback's going to be. And Bengals still have a lot to prove. Yes, they got to the Super Bowl this year, but is this just a one-hit wonder with Joe Burrow, or can they sustain it? Personally, I think they're going to sustain it, but still, I think eventually in 2023 and beyond, the AFC North could be an easier division and the AFC could be an easier path. So ultimately, I think the Browns, as dysfunctional as they might be the best possible spot for Deshaun Watson. And even if he's suspended and next year is still a bit of an iffy year for the Browns, these next few years after will certainly reap the rewards. Tim, maybe you could chime in.
Yeah, I mean, for the Browns, this was a must move. Obviously, with Baker requesting a trade, get a quarterback that has proven that he can throw for 4,000 plus yards and really prove himself to be an elite level quarterback. I mean, let's be honest, up there with Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Every year Deshaun Watson's been on the football field, especially with his throwing ability, he's been arguably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I really do think that Deshaun Watson's going to do some special things in Cleveland. But Rahill brought up a point, too, that I'm just still a little bit concerned about. Obviously, Amari Cooper, number 1 target now over there in Cleveland. But they're going to need to still work up something, rather if it's free agency, drafting, so on. I'm still a little bit worried about the receiving core. I'm not saying that Amari Cooper at the age he is now can't lead a receiving core, but we can't ignore that Amari Cooper, even though it's toned down a lot since he's left Oakland, still has a history with big drops. And a lot of that comes when he's a lot of the main focus. So, and we saw it a little bit as well when he went to Dallas and he was the main focus of the offense before they started mixing things up, obviously getting guys like CeeDee Lamb and so on involved in the offense. But I really think that Cleveland's going to need someone else to really help that out. You mentioned Juju, potentially. I also don't rule out the possibility of the Browns maybe even now at this point trading away a couple more picks or future investments and so on, if it means them getting in a guy that could be versatile enough. But I mean, what a huge move for the Browns. Obviously, I know for the Texans, you get some big picks in return, and there's a lot of opportunity. But I also want to point out too, the Browns given a 5-year extension, that shows their confidence that they have the guy for the future. It's just my biggest worry for the Browns. Are the Browns going to Cleveland Brown? That's a simple question, because let's be honest, this year, we thought this team was going to be AFC Championship bound. Before the preseason, we talked about how
dominant. Them winning the Super Bowl.
Exactly. So I thought this team was ready. And the fact that now they make an even bigger step in the quarterback, just for example, like the Rams did last year. Obviously, the Rams go on to win a Super Bowl. For the record, I don't put this team in the same stature as what the Rams are, because I still feel the Rams have a lot of talent, through and throughout. The Browns still need a lot of defensive help too. I don't think that can be ignored. But when it's all said and done, I think this is a great first step for the Browns. And I agree. I think there's still going to be some type of suspension this year. I don't think how do I put it? This year won't be the winning move, but we'll see 2-3 years down the road how it pays in for the Browns. Obviously, too, how many years left does Myles Garrett have on his contract? I think that's a big question, too.
That's starting to dwindle, I think, too. I think there's only a year or two left.
Because you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to pay. And again, I know the defense, circling around, obviously you need core receivers and so on to help Amari Cooper. But when you look at it, I mean, again, that's someone you're going to want to bring back on your defense. I heard a rumor, too, that they've offered Jadeveon Clowney back as well for a 2-year deal, which would be awesome if they bring him back, which, again, that pass rushing unit will be elite regardless. But it's really been the secondary that's always been the problem for Cleveland. I mean, you can't win games when you're allowing 40 points a game, no matter how good your quarterback is. That's just a simple fact. So I'm eager to see how the Browns continue to approach this, but definitely they get an A+ for me to start off this offseason, and how they were able to make a bad situation good in an instant.
So let's get to some rapid fire, because we're in a weird time because of the MLB lockout and such. We actually have 2 free agencies going on in major sports at the same time. So I want to bounce back and forth with you guys on a few topics. And I'll go to Rahill first, because one of my favorite things is seeing things that get Rahill really heated. And yesterday, the Green Bay Packers were in a trade where, I quote, Rahill Jaiswal said, arguably the worst trade in NFL history, because the Packers traded away Davante Adams to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, long before there were rumors that Davante Adams would ultimately end up heading to the Raiders, but many people thought when Aaron Rodgers came back, agreed to the contract, that Davante Adams would be staying. But now it appears Aaron Rodgers signed with the knowledge that the team would not be able to afford his number 1 target, and that if he took that money, they would be forced to get rid of him. So clearly Aaron Rodgers doesn't really value Davante Adams as much as we thought he did, which is very hypocritical, being that Aaron Rodgers has complained so much about how this team doesn't get him good receivers, and the one good one he has, he won't take a pay cut to try to keep him. Instead, he wants $50 million a year and is willing to let Davante Adams go elsewhere. So Rahill, your feelings on that trade?
So that was my initial reaction. Okay. It's calmed down a little bit, because Green Bay offered him more money than the Raiders did, but Davante just said no, which I think is the most shocking part of this. If Green Bay didn't offer him the money and slapped him with the franchise tag, then you think, okay, but the fact that Davante said no to Green Bay and said, let's go to the Vegas Raiders. And now keep in mind, he played with Derek Carr in college. They've been pretty much boys for time. So that probably had a lot to do with this. So that's what really surprises me. And now for Green Bay, boy, oh boy, you better sign some receivers in free agency. I mean, I don't want to put this all on the management, because they offered him the money, but at the same time, you had the chance to give him the extension last year. That fell through. And in 2018, a lot of people came out and said, we need to be developing young receiving core talent, because when this year comes, or at that time, 2021 comes around, 2022, all these guys are free agents. We got to have someone, if we lose someone, we got to have someone willing to fill that void and have some experience. Now they've got no one. I mean, let's be honest. So, I mean, who's out there? We throw out Jarvis Landry, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Julio Jones, OBJ. I think OBJ is probably going to re-sign with the Rams. Okay. And also, will he be even healthy for the start of the season? All right. Julio Jones, were you really going to take a chance on him after the year in Tennessee? I mean, he had a really bad down year. He got hurt, can't stay healthy. And Jarvis Landry also, I mean, we talk about it here. I don't think he's a number one wide receiver, guys. I mean, to me, he's more of a number two kind of fancy slot sort of guy. I don't consider him, he's more of a high volume catch sort of player, but you need someone, because right now Aaron Rodgers literally has no one to throw the ball to. And yeah, they could have got more for him, but at the same time, he had no contract. So if you think about it, it's almost better as if they trade him now instead of trying to keep him. And then we get to July 20th and you can't trade him and you're giving up $20 million in cap and he's not playing. But Green Bay, man, you better get some wide receivers, because the defense is still going to be the same. So they're probably still going to win the division. But at the same time, you didn't pay Aaron Rodgers $50 million to win the division. You paid him to win the Super Bowl. So you gotta figure something out. I don't know what they're going to do at the receiver position, but you got to figure. If you don't sign anyone, I don't know what they're going to do, Eddie. They have to sign someone.
Yeah, it's unquestionable. And, you know, March Madness, MLB free agency, NFL free agency all going on. But we haven't even mentioned the fact that the greatest player in the history of the NFL just casually came out of retirement the other day, Tim. Tom Brady is back. 40-day retirement lasted less than half as long as the Major League Baseball lockout. He's back in Tampa Bay. We heard them say they were going to leave the light on, leave the door open. Tom Brady pulls the Michael Jordan. He's back and ready to go in Tampa Bay. And instantaneously, the Bucs become one of, in my opinion, with, like you just mentioned, the glaring issues with Green Bay, one of the top two favorites in the NFC, head-to-head with the LA Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. So what do you make of this move from Brady? Does it really surprise you? And do you think the Bucs can make a Super Bowl run and try to get him his 8th title?
It really doesn't surprise me, because, again, if I'm Tom Brady, I've written such a massive legacy of my career to this point. I've proven to be the greatest quarterback of all time, an absolute winner, and someone that at retiring was within the MVP discussion. If I'm Tom Brady, why in the hell would I not want to retire out a Super Bowl champion? Not saying that Tom Brady will, but thinking with that, the competitor we know Tom Brady to be, for him to just retire after losing, a random divisional playoff game, that's not Tom Brady. Let's be honest. And I think Tom was thinking about his family during the time and so on. But come on, now we're talking about Tom freaking Brady. You got to, and I don't want to put this in a category, for example, with Brett Favre, because there was a lot more stuff that went around with Brett Favre. But if you thought for 1 second that Tom Brady was going to sit down on the couch and watch football on his television and say, man, I'm okay I'm okay sitting on the couch watching this, you sure as hell know that's not the right answer. Let's be honest. Tom Brady, and I really do believe this, and I know we've said this, for example, about Major League Baseball players like Alex Rodriguez and so on, and, guys that are known to have a competitive spirit, right? We believe that they're going to be in football forever. I truthfully believe that Tom Brady, and I don't mean that he's going to play football forever, but I truly believe that Tom Brady, when he's retired, some way, if it's ownership, if it's coaching, I thought the funny thing was, hey, he was going to go be the offensive coordinator for Bill Belichick this year. I thought that was a legitimate possibility. Obviously not the case. They turned around, they brought in Joe Judge, and they're having some type of, not even a coordinator system, but a team system, something that Joe Judge, let's be honest, tried to orchestrate towards the end of the season in New York and didn't work out. Doesn't mean it won't work out in New England, because it's Bill freaking Belichick. But the point is this. The Buccaneers, let's be honest, they're lost without Tom Brady. Their best option, outside of obviously trading for a Deshaun Watson, would have been maybe bringing back Jameis Winston, maybe turning around and trying to trade for a mediocre mid-tier quarterback. That just wasn't going to happen. Kyle Trask wasn't going to be the answer. So the fact of the matter is, for Tampa Bay, It's huge that they bring back Tom Brady. And I'm going to be honest, this is my team instantly, not because it's Tom Brady, but I believe that this team last year, again, didn't really make many changes, right? And I talk about this all the time. Every year we talk about a championship here on this show. They got very lax. They brought back every player from last year that they physically could and made very, very minor additions. Obviously now, with the way free agency is shaping up, that's not going to be the case this year. I think the Bucks turn around. They're going to find some more core veterans and so on, and they're still going to have a lot of guys back from 2 seasons ago. But I really think the Buccaneers to turn around and win another Super Bowl. And I don't want to jump the gun, but I think Tom Brady wins MVP this year. I think he got robbed last year. I truthfully, when you compare Aaron Rodgers' season 2 years ago, and I don't want to undermine Aaron Rodgers, but Tom Brady quite literally led the league in every passing category last year. And the fact of the matter that he did not win MVP, and I know Rodgers' QBR was a big part of him winning it, but his stats were very comparable to Aaron Rodgers. And the fact that someone that showed up to every game didn't win MVP still bothers me. And I think he's going to be your MVP as well next year.
We got breaking news that just came in 2 minutes ago. Juju Smith-Schuster has signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. So another player is going to the AFC West. He just announced it. Adam Schefter just tweeted it 1 minute ago.
He's going to get the Sammy Watkins treatment. What is he? He's going to be third most in targets, fourth most in targets, and then he's going to ask for a trade or get released.
Well, I mean, he can't be a number one. We've already seen that. So
yeah, but I mean, Tyreek Hill. I mean, let's not underrate Mecole Hardman. I know he's been overrated for a bit, but he still gets his fair share of looks. And
we're forgetting about the other factor here too. He gets to dance on TikTok with Jackson Mahomes now at Arrowhead Stadium. That would be amazing.
Oh no. You know what? Maybe. You know what? If they bring Randy Reed, I'm okay with it. If they bring Randy Reed, I'm okay with it. I was convinced too the Chiefs are going to win a Super Bowl this year, only for the fact that Randy Reed was back for the first time since the pandemic when they last won a Super Bowl. It just didn't work out this year.
So that's the deal with Juju. One other deal I just want to mention very quickly, then we'll get to MLB. Von Miller, I think we can all agree, great player, great signing, great contract for him with the Bills, but 6 years, he's going to be 39 at the end of the deal. He had a great year. He was a big reason the Rams won the Super Bowl, but I think it's insane, really, that they offered him that much and that long of a deal, but he will help the Buffalo defense for sure in the short term. A Buffalo defense that, of course, got thwarted on a 13-second drive by Patrick Mahomes last year, definitely felt the necessity to make some changes. Also need to beef up that secondary a little bit too. But let's go to baseball, because we got MLB free agency going on right now. And one move that I'm really confused about, I was watching Chris Russo's show on MLB Network, and I'm 100% agree with him on this. Why the Braves would not bring back Freddie Freeman and instead go for Matt Olson. And Matt Olson, it's a very similar contract between what Freddie Freeman ultimately got with the Dodgers. And, you know, if you could afford, obviously you would have thought maybe Freeman was too expensive, but what you gave to Matt Olson, and Olson, by the way, his contract is 2 years longer than what Freddie Freeman got with the Dodgers. The fact that Freeman was really the primary reason this team won the World Series last year, if you really think about it. I know the outfield additions at the deadline were huge, and they got some clutch starting pitching down the stretch, but Freddie Freeman was the one consistent factor there from beginning to end as that team lost Soroka, lost Ozuna, lost Acuna. You would have thought maybe the benefit of the doubt they would have spent on him. I know Matt Olson is 2 years younger, but Freddie Freeman also bats 300. Olson only bats 250, and Freddie Freeman, in my opinion, is a slightly better defensive player too. And seniority, tenure, he's been there for 12 years. He's been the face of that franchise for so long. I don't think they're really going to get that much worse with Matt Olson necessarily. He's still a great player, no knocking him, but I don't understand this move bringing in Freddie Freeman at all. Bringing in Matt Olson and letting Freddie Freeman go to the rival Dodgers, who, by the way, are going to be hungry to get back and try to take down the Braves, who knocked them out in the playoffs last year. But I want to talk about the Yankees since I got both of you guys here, because Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Josh Donaldson, to the Yankees. Gary Sanchez is gone. Gio Urshela is gone. And then we don't know when it comes to the old vaccine too, because Tim sent a screenshot in our group chat about how it seems like this vaccine rule in New York is going to be a bit indefinite. So it's not necessarily going to be something where infection rates go down. You're going to see these vaccine rules gotten rid of because they say, quote, they can't predict the future. Now, the Yankees have Aaron Judge, and based on his indications and what he said, it's pretty obvious he is not vaccinated. We know the Nets situation with Kyrie Irving. Nets, Brandon Nimmo, James McCann were not vaccinated last season. That could still be the case now. But for the Yankees, let's focus on them because Aaron Judge, we know what a huge piece he is. And by the way, if he's not going to play, you'd think, oh, you've got other boppers. You've got Luke Voigt. No, you don't. Luke Voigt got traded today to the San Diego Padres. So, Rahill, I see you in like dismay. So I'll go to you first on this.
I don't think Giancarlo's vaccinated either.
You know, he is not. And hold on, I just want to say this. You know the suggestion you sent me last night?
Yep.
I've got a better idea.
Okay.
Why don't we take Yankee Stadium and move it to MetLife? I'm just saying the factory of sadness will continue and they'll at least be able to play.
Okay. So for those who are confused, my strategy I proposed to Tim was sneaking in and I don't know, maybe knocking them out and giving them the vaccine in their sleep. But listen, I mean, if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's fine. It's a personal decision. My view doesn't change on you if you don't get vaccinated. That's fine. You can argue all you want. The mandate, some people think it's unfair. You know, it's a controversial thing because it kind of takes away the decision making. If you don't think it's fine, I don't really care about your opinion on that. I just feel like as players, please can you get vaccinated just to avoid the complications of going through extra protocol, not being there for half a season. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Garrett Cole, as soon as the lockout ended, texted, "Let's go win a world championship." Can't win a world championship if you only play 81 games. That's just not it. So listen, I respect all the players' decisions. If you don't want to get vaccinated, fine. But just to avoid I just feel like to avoid complications, make sure you get all your game checks and help your team win. That you'd want to get vaccinated, but same thing with Kyrie Irving. I respect his decision not to get back. You know, it's his personal decision. But at the same time, you would just wish to avoid because you look what he can do with Brooklyn in there. You just wish at some point he would get the vaccine. And listen, you can't bank on the mandates to change, okay? Because it's such a touch and go thing. Who knows? Maybe they take it off and then they put it back on. So. I don't know. We're going to see. Maybe they're all open to getting vaccinated before the season starts. I would hope so, but I don't know.
Yeah, Tim, I mean, you might disagree with the mandates, which I think are ridiculous because visiting players who are unvaccinated are allowed to come and travel and play, yet home team players can't. Kyrie Irving, for example, for the Nets, allowed in the building to watch the game as a spectator, allowed on the floor to greet Kevin Durant after he dropped 53 in the New York Knicks, but then goes in the locker room, the team gets fined $50,000. So, it's annoying, but Tim, the easiest thing to do if you want your team to win and you want to be able to play, is to get vaccinated. I don't know, it's kind of simple as that, at least in my mind.
Are you insinuating I want the Yankees to win?
I don't even know what, Tim, I don't know.
Are you insinuating I want the Yankees to win? Let's totally not ignore. Now, don't get me wrong. I want the Yankees to win. But let's not ignore that them not getting vaccinated and not playing is going to save me a year of sadness because of the fact that the Yankees still don't have anyone that can pitch a baseball. They traded Luke Voigt for a 19-year-old that we may never even see play Major League Baseball. Granted, he's a top 100 prospect, but that doesn't mean anything in baseball. We all know this. The trade for Josh Donaldson, I'll start with this before I get to the vaccine point, it is absolutely mind-boggling for me, okay? I always have talked about, and I talked about this with Rahill multiple times as well, if the Yankees need to trade anyone outside of obviously Gleyber Torres for trade value and Gary and so on, Gio Urshela would have been my guy. And I'm glad the Yankees traded him. But the fact that they traded him for Josh Donaldson, who at most may hit 7 or 8 more home runs, produce around the same amount of RBIs, and hit for less average, and might I add, play a lot less defense, is absolutely mind-boggling to me. That's not going to help the New York Yankees win a World Series. Sure, the home runs and the long ball threat, but Gio Urshela, if you look at his stats, I know his offense isn't a guarantee, but he's been a lot more consistent of an offensive player over the last 2 to 3 seasons than hoping an aging Josh Donaldson will be that answer. Josh Donaldson has not been the same since he's won MVP. Since he's left Toronto, he has been inconsistent. Sure, there's been the RBI numbers and so on, but especially he's hitting in big moments, which circling other big Yankees hitters, which has always been the major criticism, is a problem for me. Sure, you get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, that's great, but that's not how do I put it? I'm fine with him playing the infield. I'm fine with him playing every day, but that's not Trevor Story. That's not Carlos Correa. That's not a difference maker for this offense. But I'm not even asking for those two. I'm asking for a pitcher. I want somebody that isn't Michael Guest that can go out there and throw a baseball for me. Because I'm going to be honest, I'd rather take someone off the streets at this point. The Yankees don't have an answer pitching in Rahill. Now this will go to my point about the vaccine. You mentioned Garrett Cole. You brought up a point about 80 games. Well, in a realism, a starting pitcher will, pitch at most 35 games a year. To be frank, the way baseball's been over the last 2 to 3 years, you're at most seeing 28 outings. So that means Garrett Cole, if he's not injured, will see at most probably 14 to 15 outings because of the way the road and homestand split, right? Assuming he doesn't get vaccinated. Sure, he'll be healthy for the postseason, but what does that do when the Yankees don't have another pitcher to rely on in the starting rotation? Luis Severino, he could get hurt tomorrow, and the Yankees don't have a number 2. I have no faith in Domingo Germán. He was all over the place the last 2 years, basically.
Oh, he's on the IL.
Well, there's that
there
too. So we're already starting off strong, of course. Jordan Montgomery, don't get me wrong, has been consistent, and he's a lefty to break up this rotation. But even if the Yankees turn around and trade for some Oakland pitcher that is going to be equivalent to Sonny Gray, if not worse, it doesn't do much for the New York Yankees. And it's like, I don't want to bash the Yankees, but it's the point of progress is not going to happen when you're constantly complacent with your system. The problem with the New York Yankees, and I will stand by this point, I've stood by it since 2017. The problem with the New York Yankees as an organization, and it's just a fact of the matter, is they have a manager that still has no clue what he's doing in situational awareness. Let's be honest, Aaron Boone, if he doesn't get it done this year, he's going to be on a chopping block. And probably come by June, Yankees fans are going to have him on a chopping block. Brian Cashman is stuck in his same exact ways as he's been. And again, I do want to give Brian Cashman credit. He's found a lot of great players. For example, I'll say it like this, and I don't want to jump out and say, oh, like this guy's going to be a superstar to like DJ LeMahieu status. But like, I'm intrigued to see a guy like Ender Inciarte, who was an all-star back in 2017, was batting around 300 most of his career in Atlanta. And then the last 3 years after he lost starting opportunities has faded out of nowhere now at the age of 31. I'd love to see him get an opportunity to replace Brett Gardner's role. I think he could be something on the offensive end and be a good left-handed hitter for the New York Yankees that could hit for average and be a big defensive step up from Brett Gardner. But the Yankees aren't, for example, going to do any justification with Aaron Hicks always getting hurt in center. But we're going to keep Aaron Hicks, right? The Yankees outfield is a little bit of a question. And sure, you can bring in all this offense. But to me, it's frustrating the fact that the vaccination standpoint, your biggest superstars play key positions, and they likely will miss half this season. And for let's not forget this. What happens when the postseason comes around? The mandate's right there. And Eddie, you brought up a point, for example, about about the rule being a little bit misguided and like, hey, you could be or cannot be vaccinated. You can't play, but you could show up to the stadium. I believe that the rules in general should be equal. Now, I will say this from being someone that lives in New York State. The laws are frustrating as heck because I can go to New Jersey, for example. I can go to Connecticut. There's no mask mandate laws. But here in New York, I've got to wear a mask every single place I go. I've got to show vaccination proof at times if it is requested, depending on the area you're in. So I understand stuff varies state by state. I get that. But here in New York, it's just overcomplicated. And I understand where these players are 100% coming from. But at some point, there needs to be some mutual ground. And if you're that serious, if you're a Yankees player, in my opinion, and you're determined to win a World Series, which organization standpoint, the Yankees aren't, in my opinion. But, you mentioned Garrett Cole and so on. It's as simple as this. And again, whatever your beliefs are, you fall on. But if you really care about a World Series that much, they'd get vaccinated. But we'll see what happens. The Yankees still have to make a lot of moves. I still think, in my opinion, the Yankees have to trade away Gleyber Torres because I don't see a role for him in terms of where the Yankees can fill him. The Yankees still, need some more depth as well. Obviously, I mentioned Inciarte could be a great step for them. But, I mean, unless they're getting a pitcher, anytime soon, which they won't be. I mean, how can you let Zach Greinke walk to Kansas City? Zach Greinke can still be a productive pitcher. And I don't want to keep on ranting about free agency, but it's just the Yankees as a whole, to me, rather what happens or not, to me, it's a disappointment. And there's one thing you didn't bring up, for example, Eddie, the Mets. I'm not sure. I didn't get to see the roster, for example, the Mets players that are unvaccinated. But for me, I view it more as a disappointment for the New York Mets with all the progress they've made this offseason with Steve Cohen. And let's be honest, I know last season didn't turn out to be what it was expected to be. But if the Mets don't turn around here and don't win the NL East, especially with the changes to the Braves, don't turn around and find success and hopefully for the Mets standards, get that World Series that fans have been dying for years, obviously, yeah, it's going to be a disappointment, but it'll be even more of a disappointment if a lot of those big players can't play, considering the situation. So I think really, if you're a New York team in general, you just got to sit down and discuss, because the problem is too, this is the city's rules. It's different if you go upstate. It's different. For example, the Buffalo Bills don't have the same problem as the New York Yankees. Mm-hmm. The New York Giants, which again, I understand them and the Jets, they're theoretically in Jersey, but they won't have to deal with the same problems. It's only here in the metropolitan area, unfortunately, where you're going to have these problems. So, see, it's tough because I get the point of the players. I understand that. I don't want to keep on going on a rant, but it's just what it turned out to be. Something has to meet common ground at some point. And it's just such a complex situation. But yet the state and the laws, Major League Baseball makes all these things that it has to be, as well as the NFL and the NBA. I just don't know what to say. But in terms of the New York Yankees, regardless of who's there, who's not, in my opinion, there's still not much hope unless there's an urgency for change, which there hasn't been much of.
The AL East is still so stacked too. The Rays are going to be great no matter who's there. The Blue Jays have improved. Boston is still going to be tough. So it's going to be difficult for them. You mentioned the Mets. I mean, we don't really know. Brandon Nimmo is pretty known that he is unvaccinated. As of last year, the Mets were actually had the third highest percentage of unvaccinated players of any team in baseball behind the Cubs and the Tigers. So that's a little frustrating. So hopefully some of those players have changed. Buck Showalter is very outspoken about his players getting vaccinated. So maybe he can steer some players in that direction, just for the simple fact of you want to be out there for the full 162 games. We saw how much the Mets season was derailed last year by injuries and having so much turnover repeatedly in their lineup and in that rotation. So you finally have depth. You want to be able to make use of it the best you can and not have to rely on bringing in the replacements, as we talked about last May when there were so many injuries, for something like this. So as frustrating as the mandates might be, and even if I might disagree with the way the mandates are put in New York compared to other states. You got to follow the rules, and hopefully the Mets can get as much of a group out there as possible. But stay tuned for part 2. We'll be talking some NCAA tournament March Madness action. Rahill Jaiswal will be staying with us. So stay with us here in Sports Speak. Eddie Kalegi with Tim Moore, and we'll be back with some March Madness talk. Welcome back to part 2 of episode 91 of Sports Speak. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
If you're listening on Spotify, want to catch part 1, just go back on our Spotify channel. You can find everything there. And of course, on YouTube, we're still together in the one same video. And also, so I don't forget in this episode, a reminder to follow along on our Twitter at SportsSpeak Live with me and Tim's NASCAR pick'em. Tim's usually good at predicting everything, but somehow I've actually gotten the higher finisher, I think, in 3 of the 4 races. I've gotten the driver with more points in all 4 races and I have a solid lead right now. We'll see what happens at Atlanta on the new configuration on Sunday. But of course, when we were recording part 1, the news came out, Deshaun Watson heading to Cleveland. And then, of course, Antonio Brown had to hop on Twitter very recently, just about 15 minutes ago. We're recording this just before 5:00 p.m. Eastern time. And he tweeted twice. First, he said, Cleveland Antonio Browns, CAB. Then he tweeted, take the Browns to Super Bowl, not toilet bowl. I don't even know what he's talking about, but clearly all of a sudden Antonio Brown wants to join the Cleveland Browns. Now, that would make for quite the interesting combination of people. You'd have Deshaun Watson, Kareem Hunt, Antonio Brown, and Myles Garrett all on the same roster. Draw from that what you will. But, Rahill, I'll ask you, do you think AB could potentially work even in a short spurt? We know it's nothing's ever going to work long term, but if he were to come for a season, do you think it could potentially work with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland?
You can tell what my answer is. No. Listen, he's going to hop on Twitter all the time. That's what he is. But please, no. I do not want to see this man in an NFL jersey ever again. He has given, how many chances has this man been given to sort of redeem himself, sort of say? And you already mentioned they've already got the most interesting guys in the locker room there. Keep in mind, didn't Amari Cooper come on a couple of times last year and criticize not getting the ball in Dallas? Or
yep.
So do you already have problems there? Why do you just want to add another problem? Also, keep in mind, Cleveland, not the most stable of franchises. Okay, listen, if Tom Brady could not rein in Antonio Brown's ego, nobody can. That was the guy he had the ultimate respect for and was the only guy who was willing to take a chance on him. And Tom Brady was the only guy Antonio Brown was willing to listen to. And he turned on him as soon as Antonio Brown didn't get what he wanted. And keep in mind, this is also going from a football standpoint. How old is Antonio Brown? 33, 34 years old?
Yeah, I think 33 now.
Claims to be coming off a year where he needed surgery on his knee. So he's lost probably a step or 2. So the argument is here, you don't take him because he was in the off chance telling the truth and he's a step slower, or you found out he was lying. So why would I want him if he's not the same old Antonio Brown? He's older, he's lost a step, okay? And he's still got the big ego. And he's gotten injured multiple times in Tampa Bay in the middle of the season. Keep in mind, he didn't play that NFC Championship game in Green Bay. Okay, then he got spent off the whole fake vax card. So even in a full season, you can't trust him to stay out of trouble or stay healthy. So no, I don't want him there. He's been trying his luck everywhere. He was saying Dallas, then he was saying Baltimore. Now he's saying Cleveland. No.
I just wanted to get your take on that because I know out of anything that Rahill Jaiswal, I don't think there's anything Rahill Jaiswal hates more than Antonio Brown. So especially when all the saga went down in December, the many texts that me and Tim were both getting from him, they definitely have some beef. But speaking of having beef, I've got some beef with my main bracket so far. The NCAA tournament, we've already had some upsets. Now, this just shows the unpredictability of a bracket. My main bracket that I spent an hour doing, I'm looking at metrics, I'm looking at points per game allowed defensively. That bracket has gone wrong. Then for a second, one of the pools that I'm in, you had to enter a second bracket. It's a pool for money. So I just did, you know what, I'll try some things. I literally filled out a bracket in 1 to 2 minutes. Guess what? that's the bracket that's leading the entire pool right now. I'm 16 out of 19 with my picks. So somehow that bracket where I wasn't really thinking that well, it's like, you know what, maybe Richmond will pull off an upset. You know what, maybe New Mexico State will take out UConn. Aside from the St. Peter's Kentucky game, and I had some faith in Sister Jean, and that kind of failed me. No divine intervention today against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Aside from those games, I'm basically perfect in that bracket. And that's the one where I wasn't really thinking doing it. I was just like, all right, I have to fill out a second one. And then my main bracket is actually worse than my joke bracket that I did for Geo Baker's bracket tournament, where I had Rutgers going all the way and winning the championship. That one is better than the one that I spent an hour doing based on metrics and actual statistics. So, you know, you never know what's going to happen. And then you have St. Peter's from the MAC taking out John Calipari in Kentucky. I mean, yesterday was so entertaining with some of these games. And you know what? Tim went on a 15-minute rant. I've got a rant for about a minute about my Rutgers Scarlet Knights, because that was so painful to see them lose to Notre Dame like that. Now, it was building up because every Big Ten game was stressful for Rutgers, because if they were down big early, they'd always come back and make it a close game. Or if they had a big lead early, they'd always let another team come back in the second half. Every game was like a one-possession game for Rutgers this year. I believe they were on a stretch. I think 15 of their last 18 games were settled by 5 or less points. Every game was close for this team. And then, of course, going to overtime and then double overtime. I was producing at the radio station. Then I had to go on the post-game show. Our phone lines didn't even work. We couldn't take callers. So I just ranted for 40 minutes about the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and where they go from here. But I've just got to say one thing that frustrates me. Notre Dame got the game-winning shot with 1.4 seconds left in double overtime. Rutgers still had a timeout, and Coach Peichel didn't use it. I know you couldn't, with college basketball rules, you couldn't move it up and have an inbound from the far side and get to midcourt, but you could have organized a play to at least try to set up an open shooter. Because let's not forget, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights had a game-winning shot from half court earlier this year with Ron Harper Jr. So it is possible if you can organize the right play. Instead, they left the timeout in their pocket and just forced Geo Baker to try to chuck something up with like 3 defenders in front of him, and he didn't even get the shot up at all. So that frustrates me. It's disappointing because I thought Rutgers had a chance to make it and potentially go far, especially with the Big Ten. You know, they competed so well in the Big Ten this year. I know the Big Ten over the last couple of years generally has struggled in the NCAA tournament. We've already seen the Big Ten champion eliminated, Iowa falling to Richmond. But I thought Rutgers had a serious chance. Geo Baker, Ron Harper Jr. both came back for a 5th year, took advantage of the COVID extra eligibility year to try to run it back, try to go further, because this team had a bad taste in their mouths after the round of 32 loss to Houston last year. Thought they got so close to the Sweet 16, and that region had been already blown up by Syracuse and Loyola Chicago pulling off some big upsets. So suddenly Rutgers could have potentially had a path to the Elite Eight or maybe even the Final Four if they'd beaten Houston. But I'll digress on that. Just frustrating, but excited to see what happens next year. It's going to be tough next year, though, with Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr. gone. But done with Rutgers. Done talking about that. Other teams. Tim, I'll go to you first. Your biggest surprises or things you've noticed so far from the first day and a half of this tournament?
Yeah, well, I'll start with today. I mean, I have no idea what to expect for Ohio State moving forward with arguably against Loyola Chicago, who might I had in my Elite Eight. I know I have 2 teams overall, if I'm not mistaken, that I had in my Elite Eight. One of them, in the case of Iowa, being in my Final Four, already eliminated from my bracket. But with that being said, you know, Michigan, I mean, I don't know if you could play as bad of offense as Ohio State. Michigan, I'll say, is ultimately one of my surprises in a little bit. But Ohio State, I don't know if you can play as bad of offense as what that game was. I mean, the combined, I think it was maybe 21% shooting from the field. I mean, it was just an abysmal game back and forth. And definitely today, not that good. Michigan, and I'll go for that in being my surprise. I mean, statistically, they had not been a team that had played well this year against ranked opponents in the top 25. And the fact that they were able to turn around and get somewhat of an upset victory definitely surprised me a little bit. I'm kind of a little bit eager to see what this team does moving forward. But I do want to say, outside of surprises, and I know you're not going to like what I'm about to say, Eddie, but if I am any team licking my chops right now in regards to a team that's come out of the round of 64, it's probably Purdue. And the only reason why I say is this, okay? Had Kentucky won their round of 64 game, it would have lined up right around, I believe, the Sweet 16, where ultimately, had Purdue won out, these two teams would have ended up facing. Instead, now, the hardest game ultimately that should be had for Purdue is like in terms of a high ranked opponent, they may not even have until the Elite Eight. They're going to face around, maybe 8 to 11 seed teams going into this tournament all the way through. So I really think for the Boilermakers, you have a really big opportunity here. But the one thing I have to say about March Madness, now again, I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but this year in particular, I was listening to something last night. They pointed out Kentucky, for example. Winning 20 games is no longer that big of an accomplishment in the NCAA. There's a lot of teams that do that every year, but it's about the quality of wins you have. And the thing that stinks about March Madness in particular, okay, all it takes is one bad game. That's all it takes is one bad game. It's not like the NBA where you have a series where, hey, if you have one bad game, you can rebound tomorrow. It takes a good team having a bad day, and this team could be a lot better. For example, if they had a 3-game series in a round of 64, let's say Gonzaga lost game 1, which obviously they didn't, but let's say, hey, they lost the 16 seed game 1, they could turn around and play 2 really good games, and they advance to the round of 32. It's just not the case, obviously, in NCAA, hence the term madness. But there's a lot of teams, especially, obviously, I think the biggest one that you can pinpoint is Kentucky, that if Kentucky had a second chance after being absolutely dominated from start to finish, had they had a 3-game series, we could probably be talking about a different story. But, I mean, I don't know how it gets more hectic. I mean, I thought 2 seasons ago and last year with all the upsets, all the craziness, I thought it was insane. I think this year is going to be as unpredictable as possible in deciding a champion. Because, again, give Gonzaga credit of, obviously, since the pandemic, of being a team that's consistently around there. But even, for example, me having UCLA in the Final Four, and might I add, too, another team that, in my opinion, really disappointed in their round of 64 game. I'm not feeling too confident on anything I've selected. And I don't know how you guys feel. I know in our little mini bracket, I have the points lead, but theoretically, as of the moment, I believe Zoe has the potential of the most points going into the next round. So it's definitely intriguing, and I'm eager to see how this all plays out moving forward.
Yeah, it's tough, and really it's a theme of this season in college basketball. Let's not forget the last Saturday of February, for the first time in the history of the AP poll, the top 6 teams in the country all lost. There was so much parity this year, and while Gonzaga is the number 1 overall seed and many consider to be the best team in the country, and their only losses have really been to very good teams, the Gonzaga Bulldogs, though I have them as my champion in a couple of my brackets, they never perform well. They never really succeed in the tournament. Last year, they got their doors blown off them by the Baylor Bears in the championship game, even though they seemed like a favorite. I know they'd gotten tired out from that UCLA matchup with Jalen Suggs and Johnny Juzang going head-to-head. But that being said, many thought that was the motivation they needed, and Baylor took care of them swiftly in the NCAA championship game. And I don't really know. The Zags have a tough draw as well in their brackets, so a potential meetup with Texas Tech, who looked really in control today against Montana State in their first tournament game. So you never know. Couple teams that Tim mentioned that I specifically want to touch on. First of all, one last Big Ten rant related to Rutgers. I don't understand how Michigan, I know they got the upset over Colorado State. Maybe the committee knew something that we didn't. But if you look at statistics, Michigan had a worse record than Indiana and Rutgers. They had a worse record in Big Ten play than Indiana and Rutgers. They had a 17-point lead against Indiana in the Big Ten tournament that they blew, and they lost the game 2 days before Selection Sunday. Rutgers and Indiana both had higher seeds in the Big Ten tournament than Michigan. Head to head, Indiana had beaten Michigan in the regular season. Rutgers and Michigan split their series. The bigger margin of victory was when Rutgers beat Michigan. So I don't understand how Rutgers and Indiana both get placed into the play-in round, yet Michigan automatically gets an 11 seed. Personally, I'm not going to be too biased because I think Indiana is a better team than Rutgers, despite the fact Rutgers beat them on the Ron Harper Jr. shot to win it 2 weeks ago. Indiana also had the win over Michigan. Indiana went deeper in the Big Ten tournament than both of these teams. Mike Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers should have had that 11 seed. They should have been playing against Colorado State. Michigan should have been in the play-in game against Wyoming. I don't understand that, but I'll leave it at that. Michigan did get the upset win, could be prone for a run, but you never know with any of these Big Ten teams. Another one is UCLA because it's weird. Remember, this team was in the first four, went all the way to the Final Four last year, and nearly knocked off the Zags to get to the national championship. They did not look good at all against Akron. They were down at halftime, and this was 12 hours after they had just given their coach Mick Cronin a 6-year contract extension. So that was not a good look. Akron was motivated, trying to get the upset. UCLA did storm back to get the win and had a good final few minutes. But that's certainly a wake-up call for this team. Rahill, I know you've been texting me basically after every upset my bracket is done. So what's it looking like in the Jaiswal bracket world? And your surprises so far from the first day and a half?
You know, it's so weird because I always go upset heavy, but they've been the wrong upsets. Like I had Vermont pulling it off against Arkansas last night, and they almost did it. But then I have Iowa going to the Final Four, and then Richmond beats them. So, and this is the first year I've put any money on the line in a bracket challenge, and this is what happens. And this just shows, this just backs up the point that if we ever get a perfect bracket, it's going to be someone who has no idea about college basketball. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a couple years ago, there was that kid who almost did it, and he said like, oh, I picked Tom Izzo's Michigan State to go to the Elite Eight because I'm part Italian and he's part Italian. Like, let's be honest. Eddie, you know, you can look at all the matrix and all the stuff, but but if it's just one game, all you need is a team to look at Kentucky last night. Kentucky shot 1 of 9 from the free throw line in overtime. They are normally unbelievable from the free throw line. They go 1 of 8, and then St. Peter's goes 8 of 10. That's the difference right there. So even Ohio State today, I guess, I don't know if I've seen any more bricks laid up in that Loyola Ohio State game. Literally, the thing I was thinking when I was watching that game was, it's 70 degrees here. Maybe I go out, take a couple shots, and I can get a spot, because Loyola just couldn't hit anything. I think Ohio State hit 4 or 5 threes, and that was enough. So that just shows you the unpredictability. But a game I'm going to have my eye on is Baylor versus North Carolina, because North Carolina dismantled Marquette. They absolutely wiped them off the floor, 95-63. And Baylor also took care of business. But Baylor this year has not been convincing. Let's be completely honest. They've had a lot of people said that coming in, they were probably the weakest number 1 seed. So
they got injuries too.
And injuries. So you might see something there. And also UCLA, they better watch out, because a lot of people had Indiana pulling off the upset against St. Mary's. St. Mary's wiped them off the court. That was something shocking to see, because Indiana, I think they were top in defense efficiency. They could knock down shots. St. Mary's just completely shut them down. So that's another interesting. I had UCLA going to the Final Four. I was confident about that. I don't know anymore. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's madness. It's March Madness, and it's just going to keep getting wilder over these next couple of days. Going to be curious to see tonight if there's any other upsets. I personally picked one 13-4 upset tonight. I've seen Illinois play. I was there in the student section when Rutgers beat them pretty handily about a month ago, and I think Kofi Coburn's a great player, but Illinois looked very vulnerable. Even though they won the Big Ten regular season title, they lost to Iowa early in the Big Ten tournament. And for that reason, I thought Chattanooga, who won in thrilling fashion on a buzzer-beating double-teamed 3 to make it in with the automatic bid from their conference, I have them beating Illinois tonight. So let's see if I eat my words potentially on that. But lots to come, of course, in the NCAA tournament. And next couple of weeks, we've got a lot to talk about on SportsSpeak as well. Of course, NFL free agency will be continuing. A couple teams still in their quarterback search. MLB free agency. I mean, we still got some key players that have not signed a contract. Trevor Story's still out there. We got spring training games starting. We're just 3 weeks away from opening day. So our MLB season preview will be coming soon. And the NBA postseason is less than a month away. So it's the spring. It's the best time of the year. And we're glad to be bringing it to you on SportsSpeak. Rahill Jaiswal, thanks again for joining us today.
Anytime.
All right, so that'll wrap up today's show. One more time, a reminder, follow along on our Twitter at SportsSpeak Live for any news and updates, and also to follow along with our NASCAR Pick'em Race 5 of the NASCAR Cup Series season at Atlanta on Sunday. The Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 qualifying rained out. Chase Briscoe, who won last week at Phoenix, is starting on the pole. Ryan Blaney on his outside. So follow along for all of that, and we'll be back next week. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off on SportsSpeak. We hope you enjoy some more March Madness action and the great weather, and we hope you have a great rest of your weekend.